I stepped into the ballroom quietly. No spotlight, no announcement, just a man in a black suit blending into the background. Tonight was supposed to be historic, the signing of an $800 million merger for the company I had built from a cramped apartment years ago. But now I was a ghost in my own creation, the founder who had stepped aside while the board installed a flashy CEO who loved microphones more than decisions. A young executive spotted me the second I walked in, not to greet me, not to shake my hand, but to shove an empty wine glass against my chest. "Hey, waiter, Cabernet, and try not to mess it up." He didn't even look at my face, just snapped his fingers and turned away. I held the glass for a moment, feeling the weight of the absurdity. Founder, majority owner, treated like staff. And somehow, it didn't bother me. It fascinated me. People reveal their true nature when they think no one important is watching. So I took the glass to the bar and played along. Moving through the room with a tray in hand, I became invisible. Executives boasted about bonuses. Board members joked about layoffs like they were discussing weekend plans. One bragged loudly, "After tonight, I'm getting that lake house. The merger is printing money." But then, kindness. Rare, subtle. A young intern thanked me for the champagne like I was an actual human being. "They're awful to staff at these events," she whispered. "Don't let it ruin your night." She smiled gently. She didn't know who I was, and that made her kindness real. Then I saw him, Raymond Mallory, the CEO, expensive suit, perfect hair, fake smile. He snapped his fingers in my direction like he was calling a dog. "You, bring me a Pinot Noir, and don't spill it." I poured it silently. He didn't deserve a reaction. The deeper I moved into the room, the more truth I heard. A mid-level manager, exhausted and honest, told her colleagues she wasn't sure she'd have a job next week. "They won't say it," she murmured, "but restructuring always hits us first." She thanked me when she took a drink. A tiny word, but it meant everything. The contrast was blinding. Arrogance at the top, humanity at the bottom. And as the night unfolded, I understood one thing clearly. Remaining invisible was the greatest power I had tonight. Because the moment they realized who I really was, the entire room would shift. But they weren't ready. Not yet. As I moved through the ballroom carrying that tray, watching people laugh, negotiate, gossip and brag as if the world revolved around their shoes and wristwatches, the air felt heavy with a kind of arrogance I had never wanted for my company. When I founded the business, I dreamed of innovation, honesty, community, of building something meaningful, not something glossy. But somewhere along the way, the people in charge had mistaken shine for substance. And tonight was proving it. The ballroom itself was ridiculous, chandeliers so big they could crush a small car, gold-trimmed walls, velvet curtains, and floral arrangements that cost more than an entry-level salary. Music floated through the air, soft and elegant, the type of jazz that tried too hard to impress people who didn't actually care about music. Everywhere I looked, glasses clinked, fake laughter erupted, and hands shook with a kind of polished insincerity I could feel from across the room. And then Raymond again. He was surrounded by investors, smiling in that perfectly rehearsed way he practiced in the mirror. You could almost see the script running behind his eyes. He noticed me walking by with the tray and waved me over sharply. "You," he said, as if I didn't have a name. "This champagne tastes flat. Bring me a fresh bottle, vintage, something decent." I nodded. "Of course, sir." A few investors chuckled at his impatience, eager to laugh at anything that made them feel superior. One of them looked at me with a smirk that said, "Poor guy, wrong job, wrong life." But then, one investor, a woman in her 60s with intelligent eyes, watched me. Not with disdain, not with pity, but with a kind of quiet curiosity. She tilted her head slightly, like she was trying to place my face, But before she could say anything, Raymond cut her off. "He's staff, Eleanor. Don't worry about him." The way he said staff made it sound like an insult. I glanced at her. She looked apologetic. "There's no shame in honest work," she said softly. Before I could respond, she was pulled back into a conversation with finance executives. I walked away again, pretending to head toward the bar, but really I was watching everything, watching how people treated me when they believed I was useless to them, watching the conversations about cutting departments that had built this company from the ground up, watching the employees who were terrified of the merger but forced to smile through the fear. Then I heard something that made my chest tighten. A junior engineer, who looked maybe 24, stood near the back of the room whispering to another employee. "I really hope I still have a job after this," he murmured. "My mom's medical bills are insane. I can't afford to start over." His co-worker placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let's hope the new owners aren't as ruthless as people say." The uncertainty in their voices struck me harder than any insult tonight. These people built the company with late nights and impossible deadlines. And they were being talked about like numbers on a spreadsheet. I wanted to tell them the truth right then. I wanted to step out of the shadows, walk to them, put my hand on their shoulders and say, "You're safe. I won't let anything happen to you." But that would break the experiment, and I needed to see everything first. As I turned back toward the center of the ballroom, a server bumped into me. Glasses rattled. I steadied the tray before anything could fall. The man gave me a small, embarrassed smile. "Sorry, man. It's chaos tonight." "No worries," I said. At least he acknowledged me. That alone separated him from half the room. Then came the worst moment before the actual worst moment. Raymond started arguing with a board member, loudly, aggressively. He grabbed the man's arm, pulled him closer, and hissed something I couldn't hear. The board member pulled away, face tense. Cameras were moving in for the contract signing, so Raymond suddenly switched to a fake smile, pretending nothing happened. But I saw it. I saw everything. And so did others. A few people on staff exchanged glances. One shook his head. "That guy's a nightmare," he whispered. "Best part is," another said, "the founders aren't even here to see what's happening to their legacy." I almost smiled. I'm right here, I thought. Closer than you think. As I continued circulating through the crowd, a sudden sharp voice cut through the air. "You, Champagne!" Raymond again. He snapped his fingers so loudly that several people turned. I walked over. He looked at me like I was gum stuck to his $600 shoe. "This is warm. Bring cold bottles. Do you not understand basic service?" Before I could move, one of the senior executives laughed and said, "Raymond, relax. He's doing his best." "Oh, please," Raymond spat. "If this is his best, we should have hired a real hotel staff instead of this parade of incompetence." The group laughed. I didn't, and that seemed to irritate him even more. "Why are you staring?" he barked. "Do your job." I nodded slowly and stepped back, but the universe has timing, perfect, merciless timing. A few minutes later, in the middle of a heated negotiation discussion, Raymond reached for a new glass of red wine. He held it by the stem, swirling it carelessly as he talked, agitated, stressed, needing somewhere to direct the chaos brewing inside him. He turned, his eyes landed on me, and in that moment his frustration found a target. "You again," he said with a derisive smirk. "Maybe you'll actually do something useful." He raised the glass of wine. Something inside me already knew what he was about to do. The room quieted. People watched with anticipation, some with discomfort, some with delight, some with phones subtly pointed in our direction. Raymond stepped closer. His eyes narrowed. He lifted the glass higher. "Next time," he said loudly, "pay attention." And then the wine came down. A deep red wave splashed over my head, down my forehead, into my eyes, all over my shirt, dripping down onto the marble floor. The gasp from the crowd was instant. A few laughs, a few horrified expressions, a few whispers. "Oh my God! Why would he do that? Is he insane?" I didn't move. Wine slid down my face and onto my collar. My hair clung to my forehead. My suit was ruined, and Raymond stepped back proudly, like he had just put someone in their place. "Clean yourself up," he said loudly. "You're embarrassing the event." Then he turned his back on me. I wiped my face slowly, calmly, almost ceremonially. The wine on my cheeks felt warm, but inside I felt steady, clear, like something had aligned. Because the man who just humiliated me in front of everyone had absolutely no idea who I was, and that ignorance would cost him everything. The wine kept dripping from my chin onto the marble floor as I stood there in front of a crowd that didn't know what to do with their shock. A few staff members froze mid-step. Some executives pretended not to see anything, suddenly fascinated by their phones. Others stared openly, divided between discomfort and curiosity. Humans are strange creatures. We claim to hate cruelty, but we can't look away from it when it happens right in front of us. I blinked the wine out of my eyelashes, wiped my face with the back of my hand, and let out a slow breath. Not anger, not humiliation, just clarity. The head caterer rushed toward me, mortified. "Oh my God. Sir, I'm so sorry. Come with me, please. We can get you cleaned up." Before I answered, the janitor, the same one who gave me the paper towels earlier, stepped beside him. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me with a quiet understanding, the kind that comes from living life close to the ground. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said. "Really?" The head caterer shook his head. "That man shouldn't be near human beings, let alone running a company." I gave a faint smile. "Not for long." He frowned, unsure what I meant. But I couldn't explain. Not yet. I walked past them both, moving toward the center of the ballroom again. Conversations resumed around me, but in a different tone now. Uneasy, fractured, loaded with whispers. "Did you see that? He dumped wine on him like it was nothing. That CEO is a nightmare. Poor guy. But also, why'd he stand there and take it?" Raymond, on the other hand, was back to performing, laughing loudly, shaking hands, pretending he hadn't just shown everyone exactly who he was. Executives followed him around like trained shadows. Investors hovered close, worried about being too far from the man their money was tied to. The cameras were already positioning near the stage for the signing ceremony. The problem for all of them was simple. I wasn't walking away, and I wasn't staying silent. I walked toward the stage, leaving a faint trail of wine drops behind me. Security noticed me approaching, and one of them stepped in front of me, blocking the stairs. "Sir, this area is restricted." I met his eyes calmly. "I need you to check with the board chair. Ask him if Daniel Carter is allowed on stage." He frowned. "Who?" "Ask him," I repeated. The guard hesitated, then pressed his earpiece. "Board chair, we have a situation at the stage. A man is insisting to be allowed up. Claims his name is Daniel Carter." A pause. A long one. Then the guard's expression shifted. "Yes, sir. Understood." He stepped aside so fast it was almost comical. "My apologies, Mr. Carter." The moment he said my name out loud, a wave of confusion rolled through the guests nearest to us. "Wait, Carter, as in Carter Tech, as in the founder." I didn't stop to explain. I just climbed the steps, wine-stained shirt and all. The entire room began to murmur. Raymond noticed me first, his eyebrows knitted together in annoyance. "What is the waiter doing up here?" he snapped. A few people flinched at his tone. Then the board chair, Thompson, stood slowly, his face draining of color. Raymond, he said in a low voice full of warning, stop talking. Raymond turned to him, bewildered. What? He's ruining the event. Why is he? He's not staff, Thompson said. He's Daniel Carter. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Raymond looked at me. Really looked. I saw the exact split second when recognition hit him like a punch to the ribs. His jaw dropped. His face turned pale. His hands loosened around his champagne glass. You, he whispered. No, you're not. I am, I said simply. And I've been here the whole night. A ripple of gasps spread across the ballroom. Cameras turned, phones lifted. Everyone stared. Raymond's voice cracked. Why were you dressed like that? Like what? I asked calmly. Like someone who works? Like someone who serves? Like someone beneath you? He swallowed hard. The acquiring company executives were now whispering frantically to their lawyers. I could hear snippets. He's the controlling shareholder. He has to sign. Is the contract even valid without him? I reached for the microphone on the signing table. Good evening, I said, voice calm but carrying across the entire ballroom. My name is Daniel Carter. I founded Carter Tech, and apparently I was also your waiter tonight. A few uncomfortable laughs escaped the crowd, but they died quickly. The tension was too heavy. I walked around this room serving drinks, listening, watching, not because I enjoy humiliation, because I wanted to see who everyone really is when they think they're above someone else. My eyes drifted across the room, settling briefly on the young intern, who looked shocked but proud, then on the exhausted mid-level manager, then on the janitor, then on the people who couldn't meet my gaze now. Some of you treated me with kindness. Some of you treated me like I didn't exist, and one of you— I turned and looked straight at Raymond, poured wine on my head. The crowd held its breath. Raymond stammered, Daniel, I didn't know— That's the point, I interrupted. You didn't know who I was, and you didn't care who I was, because to you, value is determined by status, respect is optional, kindness is selective. He opened his mouth again, but I held up a hand. Not tonight, Raymond. You've said enough. The acquiring company's lead attorney cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, does this affect your decision to approve the merger? I looked down at the contract on the table. Pen ready, pages pristine, the future of thousands of employees sitting in black ink. Before I answer, I said, lifting the microphone, I want to tell all of you what I saw tonight, what I learned, what this company has become. The entire room leaned in. I could feel the weight of the moment building, rising, aligning, not like fate, not like magic, but like the natural result of actions meeting consequences. Tonight, I said, I saw the soul of this company. And it's not in the board. It's not in the executives. It's not in the people who treated me like a prop. I looked at the staff, the intern, the janitor. It's in the people who still know how to treat others like human beings. I stepped toward the contract. Which means what I do next isn't about revenge. It's about responsibility. The crowd stirred. Raymond whispered urgently, Daniel, don't do anything stupid. Think about the money. I looked at him. It's never been about the money, I said softly. Then I picked up the pen. The entire ballroom froze. Employees prayed. Executives panicked. The acquiring company went pale. I held the pen above the signature line and set it down, without signing. The room exhaled in confusion. Then I placed my hand on the contract and ripped it straight down the middle. Gasps, screams, whispers, the snapping sound of 1,000 expectations breaking at once. I let the pieces fall onto the table. Then I said, the deal is dead. For several seconds after I tore the contract, the ballroom didn't breathe. It was as if time itself froze to process what had just happened. The pieces of the $800 million merger, the pride of the board, the obsession of investors, the trophy of the CEO, sat scattered across the polished table like confetti made of broken promises. Raymond was the first to break. "What did you do?" he choked. His voice cracked so violently that several people flinched. "Do you have any idea, what you've just thrown away?" I turned toward him, slowly, deliberately, letting him feel the weight of every second. "Yes," I said calmly. "I threw away a future built on fear, ego, and disrespect, and I feel lighter already." "You're insane," he spat. "You just cost us—" "I cost you," I corrected. "A golden parachute you didn't earn. I cost a handful of investors their bonuses, but I didn't cost the company anything worth saving." Raymond opened his mouth again, but before he could speak, the board chair, Thompson, raised a hand. His voice was steady, but there was a tremble underneath it, a mixture of shock, respect, and maybe relief. "Raymond," he said softly, "I think you should step back." "No!" Raymond barked. "This isn't happening. This is fraud. It's sabotage. It's leadership." Eleanor, the older investor, interrupted. Her voice was calm, razor-sharp, impossible to ignore. Raymond froze. She walked toward the stage, heels clicking softly on the marble, each step echoing like a gavel. "I've invested for 40 years, she said. "I've seen companies rise and fall, and I'll tell you this, the downfall always starts the same way, arrogance at the top, a CEO who thinks employees are numbers, a culture that rewards cruelty, leaders who forget their humanity." She looked directly at me, and tonight the only person in this room who behaved like a leader was the one wearing a wine-soaked shirt. I bowed my head slightly in thanks. Raymond sputtered, "This is ridiculous." "I have a contract. You have nothing," Thompson said gently but firmly. "The board moves to vote on your removal." "No!" Raymond shouted, voice cracking. "I won't let you—" But the board members were already lifting their hands, one after another, like falling dominoes. "Vote to remove." Yes. In favor. Even those who had been worshipping Raymond earlier now avoided his eyes. The only hands that didn't rise were his, and one executive who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Motion passes," Thompson announced. Raymond's face collapsed in on itself. "You can't do this," he whispered. But the strength was gone from his voice. He looked smaller, human, and utterly alone. Security approached gently, not forcefully, not aggressively, but in that quiet, professional way meant to preserve dignity even when someone didn't deserve it. Raymond backed away from them. "Don't touch me," his voice quivered. He turned toward me one last time. "You planned this." I met his stare evenly. "No, you did." And that was the truth. Every insult, every snapped finger, every casual cruelty, tonight was simply the moment the consequences arrived. He walked off the stage, shoulders collapsed inward, the weight of his own actions finally catching up with him. When he disappeared through the ballroom doors, the room remained silent for several seconds, grieving the spectacle, digesting the lesson. Finally, I lifted the microphone again. "I know this night didn't go how anyone expected," I said, "but maybe that's exactly what it needed to be." I gestured toward the crowd, the executives, the managers, the interns, the staff, the janitors. I built this company hoping it would change people's lives. But somewhere along the way, ownership changed hands, not on paper but in spirit. Leadership shifted toward people who cared more about power than purpose. I paused. Tonight reminded me who we really are, and who we're going to be again. I turned to the employees who'd been watching from the back, hope and fear mixed in their eyes. To everyone who worried about layoffs, you're safe. Those restructuring plans are cancelled, effective immediately. The young engineer who'd been whispering earlier covered his mouth in shock. To the mid-level managers who hold this company together, you're valued, and starting tomorrow, we're expanding your decision-making power. The woman who had thanked me earlier stared at me, stunned. To the staff who make events like this possible, the real backbone of every company, I see you. I respect you, and your wages are going up. The janitor blinked hard, swallowing emotion he didn't want anyone to see. And to the interns, the future of our industry, you deserve mentorship, not exploitation. The young intern from earlier began to cry quietly, wiping her cheeks with trembling hands. I smiled at her and said, "Come see me Monday morning." A wave of soft applause rippled across the room. It started cautiously. No one wanted to be the first. But then it grew and grew and became something real. A standing ovation for a man covered in red wine. When the clapping settled, I continued speaking, softer now. I didn't come here tonight to tear anyone down. I came to remember what matters. Sometimes the universe puts a mirror in front of you, not to punish, but to awaken. I scanned the crowd. Tonight, I saw every reflection: arrogance, fear, kindness, cruelty, humanity. And I had to ask myself, what story do I want this company to tell? What energy do I want it to put into the world? A deep breath. What you put out comes back to you. Not because of magic, because that's how life works. The energy you give is the life you build. Silence fell again, but a peaceful one this time. I was invisible tonight, I said, and in that invisibility I found clarity. The truth isn't who we are when the cameras are on. The truth is how we treat people when we think no one's watching. I put the microphone down. It was over, but it was also beginning. As I stepped off the stage, the staff parted for me, nodding with gratitude. The janitor placed a hand lightly on my arm. "You did good," he said. I nodded. "So did you." The intern approached next, still wiping tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing us." I smiled. "You saw me first." When I finally stepped out into the quiet hallway, away from the noise and lights, I felt the night settle around me. Not heavy, not chaotic, balanced, like everything had aligned exactly where it needed to be. My shirt was ruined, my hair was sticky. My suit was a disaster, but my purpose, sharper than ever. Sometimes life needs to stain you before it can reveal what's clean. Sometimes arrogance needs to humiliate you before humility can rebuild you. Sometimes someone has to pour wine on your head, so the truth can finally be seen by everyone else. And that truth is simple. You never lose by choosing integrity. You only lose by forgetting it.